Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
That's right, you're at Aggressive Negotiations, the Star Wars podcast that we like to think explores the unknown regions and unknown topics of Star Wars in its own unique way that you can't find anywhere else. I am Jedi Master John Mills, and joining me on this journey as we pull apart the honeycomb of the Star Wars galaxy far, far away is my dear friend, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing. Matt, are you ready for your surprise topic today?
John, I've never been more ready. Except for maybe that time on Caden Nemonia, and that doesn't count.
It doesn't. You know what? And the thing is, I grew up in the D.C. metro area, so it is my turn with the politicians, unfortunately, because we know that's what's going to turn me evil in the first place.
Very true. It's so true.
But what can keep you on the light side is if you have not had an opportunity yet, go over to Apple Podcasts, drop us a star rating and review so that people can find Aggressive Negotiations, because we do this for love. We do this out of love. And by sharing love, the love grows. So don't you want more love in the world? Go over to Apple Podcasts and drop off a rating and star review and a review and whatever, all the other stuff that goes along with it for us. Go over to Twitter, look up at the Jedi Masters for the show, at Joy Nerd Party for the network, the Nerd Party on Facebook and Instagram. Great, we've got all of that out of the way. This is going to be a weird one, man. It's going to be a real weird one. You ready for that?
I couldn't be readier.
This is what I love. And before I get into the topic, I'm going to say that there was a conversation I was having with somebody where he was asking me about recording. And he said, so what, do you guys lay out like a big production calendar and stuff like that? You know, stuff like 6 months out? I go, oh, no, I love to torture him with just weird topics that I like to throw at him every so often. And we like to shoot from the hip. And he's like, oh, okay. And so this is one of those shoot from the hip times right here. So I was thinking recently, because there's, you may have heard of Bitcoin.
It's a dangerous pastime.
I know. You may have heard of Bitcoin. Yes? You've heard of Bitcoin.
Yes, yeah.
And Dogecoin and other various types of coins. We'll have to bleep it, but they're known as shit coins. So anyway, I was thinking actually, because there's a big push where people are saying, oh, Bitcoin doesn't really count for anything. You can't have your own currency. We have to have our different currency. We have to have one joint currency. I was thinking, I immediately go to episode 1, where Watto says to Qui-Gon, Republic credits are no good here. I need something more real. So I started to ponder, do you think that there is so much currency variation in that galaxy far, far away that is one of the reasons why the Republic can't maintain trade relations and stuff like that consistently, and why the Empire has trouble exerting control and influence, and why smugglers thrive and stuff like that? What do you think it looks like when different regions of the galaxy use different currencies? What impact does that have? Because it undoubtedly happened. How does a Hutt pay a Neimoidian? How does a Neimoidian convert their coin into coin of the realm for the Republic? And how does the corporate sector convert into Imperial credits when they have their own sector of the galaxy that they control? And do you have to do a currency exchange on every planet you go to?
I mean, these exchange rates are doing murder on Misa pocketbook, So I think you have a really interesting point there, and that is a fascinating question as to, one, why the Republic isn't able to find its way into the Outer Rim, and then, of course, why we don't get the Empire being able to have more control over the Outer Rim and even just other sectors as well. And I think that is really interesting as a thought. And, I go to Solo when they're playing at Vandor, and they've got all of these different types of currency out on the table as they're playing Sabbac.
That's right.
And it does come down to, what are people going to accept as being valuable? And when you have that many races in the galaxy, it does seem like you are going to run into the problem of that not everybody's going to value the same things, and therefore what you make your currency of or any of those things won't necessarily have anything to do with what the next system does, right next to your galactic door. And so then, what does trade look like? And all of those, I think that is a really interesting thought process. And I wonder, we have like the Trade Federation and all the things that happened in episode 1, with the blocking of trade routes. And I think that's why the Trade Federation then becomes so important to the Star Wars galaxy, because it's less about currency and it's more about trade. You give us this from your planet and we give you that from our planet. And so therefore a shipping conglomeration, much like in like the Dune franchise, where, you've got the ships that can bleep in and out, instantaneously from one place to the next. And then you have the others that just go like, as fast as they can go. Like, that makes sense as to why here that would be such a big deal in the Star Wars universe. Like, and again, why the Trade Federation would be so much more important in this galaxy than currency exchange. Because unless you're on a certain planet, your currency may or may not have any value somewhere else, like Republic credits, where they have no jurisdiction, where their currency holds no weight because they're not out in the Outer Rim. Like that. Oh, that's really fascinating.
Well, I think there's also Han Solo winds up being the doorway to this as well. As you rightly call out, because in Solo, a Star Wars story, you have the different currencies on the table. But if you go all the way back to the radio drama adaptation of the original Star Wars, there is a point when Han is talking about being paid for his services at the end, where the rebels say, "We don't have Imperial credits. What are you talking about?" And Han says, "You need to maintain a good relationship with independent operators like me. Surely you have precious metals and other things like that." And I'm paraphrasing here. I don't remember the exact lines. And they're aghast at that. But it's proof to me that at the very least, Lucas and the people who were working in the Star Wars galaxy back then understood that bartering was going to be a thing when you had someplace that large. Mm-hmm. And I also think we understand in Star Wars parlance that when we hear the word spice, it has to do with, let's call it glitter stim the way they did in the 1990s. But it's a drug, essentially, right? There is spice mining on at least one of the moons of Naboo, because spice miners on the moons of Naboo are called out as possible assassins in Attack of the Clones. So, given that, is it possible that the real coin of the realm, and the reason that the Empire and the Republic never cracked down on what is essentially the drug trade, which Han gets involved in, is because that is the one thing that winds up holding value across cultures, is this drug, essentially. Mm-hmm. Everybody can use it. Everybody gets a thing out of it. Therefore, it holds value. So is it possible that drugs themselves were the most valuable and interchangeable coin of the realm in that galaxy far, far away?
It's funny how I'm such an idiot, never thinking about the idea of, how spice is in Star Wars and in, of course, Dune. So,
oh, hands down, that was in tribute to Dune, and probably why Frank Herbert got so mad when he saw Star Wars.
Yeah. I think that really works because the idea that, spice itself would be something that probably used for all sorts of different compounds, for medical purposes, it would have been something that probably in the Star Wars universe isn't just like a crazy recreational drug, that it is something that has many different uses and therefore has applications all throughout many races' lives throughout the Star Wars galaxy, and therefore makes it super important. And I think on top of that, you think about all of these ships, right, and all of their intricate computer work and the droids that you would have, and I think that that's where, as you mentioned, the radio dramas, obviously, precious metals and those type of things would be very important to the creation of all of those things and a way of life that the Star Wars galaxy has been used to. And so those are, again, all things that become something barterable with, and it does make me wonder then, for the different Star Wars currencies, what are they backed up by anything on their planets that also make them something worth something? And is that what makes certain currency worth more than other currencies, right? And why, like, maybe Republic credits aren't good out in the Outer Rim because there is nothing to back them up out there, because there is no Republic out there.
Right. That's a really interesting question about how do you back up your currency, because the currency as we understand it in the world nowadays isn't really backed by anything, honestly. So that's why a thing like Bitcoin can come up, is because if your currency isn't backed by a precious metal like gold or some other resource giving it specific value, if its only value is the weight of debt versus other debt as leveraged by other debt, then is money even real at that point? And so people would have to find a way to exchange stuff that they need. What I really think is interesting about your question is what it prompts me to think of is that Star Wars is very unique in terms of the two most popular Star franchises when I was growing up. And the field is more diverse now, but Star Wars, Star Trek, the famous head-to-head. And Star Trek always made a point of saying, oh, there's no money in the future. The Federation doesn't use money. Star Wars, very obviously, money exists. Bartering exists. All of those sorts of things that exist. And it makes me appreciate the fact that I think that might be why in some way subconsciously Star Wars winds up being more relatable, even though it's the more fantastical from my perspective, because of the fact that there is going to be no societal thing that exists where you can't, like, you have to be able to trade something.
Right.
You have to be able to symbolize value. And I even wind up thinking, and I know this is a rabbit hole, but like, if the Federation in Star Trek doesn't use money, well, then how the hell did they interact with or barter for, things of value from other cultures that they encounter?
Yeah, like the Ferengi.
Right. The Ferengi use money, and the Federation doesn't. So how do you come to terms with that? Whereas with Star Wars, we're sitting here asking this question, but we at least know that they've worked out something. And it might not always work everywhere, but there is, in fact, a consideration of that monetary value.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense as to why one seems to work and the other doesn't. And in many ways, I think, what helps is that Star Wars feels so realistic to our own sensibilities. And there's something really special about that in many ways, because we understand it. We get it as to why it works. And the thing then that really is of interest to me then in Star Wars 2 is like, we don't... it would be fascinating to have had seen any exploration of what normal people's lives are like. I guess the close we really come to is Luke's aunt and uncle, of just being two people. They've got a farm, they just are normal people. Like, that's the closest we really kind of come to with understanding what everyday life is like, what you're trying to earn your money for. And, I guess I still always have the question as to why you would stay on Tatooine of all places. It does
because you
seem
can't
strange.
afford to leave.
And that's it, but like, what is it that people are spending their money on, or what are they trying to win, and those kind of things. And like, I guess that's again where Solo kind of helps in that sense, where it helps give us an opportunity to kind of see what people do with their money. You see somebody like a Lando who uses his money to enrich himself in the sense of the clothes he wears, the ship he's on, those kind of things. And then you see other people where even just a little bit of money makes a huge difference, like Solo, where a little bit of money, like 600 credits, when they talk about what the coaxium is worth, is just enough to get them off the planet so they can start their life. I think that's really interesting.
But that even opens up. There are a couple of things I want to expand from that. But the first thing is, going off of the coaxium, there are two different values actually very early. Mm-hmm. And I know that some people view that as a continuity error, but it's more the fact, I think that speaks more to the fact that there is a fluctuating value system.
Sure.
Oh, it's worth this. It's worth this.
The kids don't even know how much things are really worth. They're just guessing,
Right. Exactly. I also think that in terms of the Lars, I think why they're trapped on Tatooine is they're moisture farming. It's not like moisture is a valuable commodity that they can use to get coin to leave the planet. So they're literally trapped. All they can do is subsistence farm.
Yeah.
And in this case, subsistence farm moisture, because that has value on Tatooine. And whatever small farming, that they can grow on their own sort of thing. But let me flip this, right? We're sitting here talking about how people trade with each other and things like that. How in any reality would the Republic or the Empire be able to stop something, a new currency, from forming? And that seems like it's the first step toward the dissolution of something like a republic, is suddenly the Commerce Guild decides this is what we use, and we will set the value of what we pay for things with, and it's separate from Republic Dataris. How does the Empire rein that in? How do you rein that? How do you keep it from different forms of currency suddenly popping up, which devalue yours by the simple nature of the fact that they even exist? There are whole shadow economies that can exist without your involvement. And so does that really mean that, like, when you get to the core worlds, they're still using money, and everybody outside of the core worlds is just using trade? You see what I'm saying? Like, how on earth do you stop the promulgation of all of these things so that, I mean, eventually when you get down to it, the Republic doesn't matter, because these other planets that are out on the Outer Rim or Mid-Rim or wherever else they are, they decided, you know what? Who cares about the Republic? We only ever deal with each other, so let's just figure out what we value, and that's what we'll deal in.
I mean, I don't know. I do think that raises a valid point as to how powerful is the Empire to be able to keep these type of things from happening. And it does seem like their power is only so much. And part of that is that they are not able to really exert much power in the Outer Rim, which will always be a problem for Palpatine having really kind of complete control of the situation. And because of that, and even his allowance of having the underworld have its place in the end could be one of the factors in undermining him. You know, because there is a segment of the population to which doesn't really live under Imperial rule. I mean, like the Empire doesn't come to Tatooine except for the fact that it's looking for Luke Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
And they're only looking for Luke Skywalker because they're actually on the hunt for these droids, right? You know, like, so, like, these things don't happen except for if they're actually looking for something they think they need. And yet, there is this thriving society that doesn't have anything to do with the Empire and really has no connection with them whatsoever, which to me seems like obviously the breeding ground for rebellion. So does currency rebellion have anything to do with that? That's a fascinating question, you know, and in some ways, I think people that are forced to the Outer Rim see that there is life beyond authoritarianism.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when you are, wow, this is really topical, but when you go to a place that you feel completely free and normal in, and then you go back to a place where you don't feel that, it's a big difference. And so I think absolutely the whole idea of currency and trade and all of those things, when you have the freedom to be able to do that out of from under the thumb of something like the Empire, 100%, I think that has an impact. Like it's obviously we're extrapolating here, but it has to.
Well, and tying it back into The Bad Batch, which is a fantastic show in every possible way, and I'm about to do another rewatch of because I just enjoyed the hell out of it. It would also explain why the Empire would be making such a push, especially as we've seen in The Bad Batch now, to have this sort of, the same way we are globally here on Earth, have the real ID system where everybody has the same consistent ID. Because once you get everybody in the same system, then you can get control of these sorts of things. And you can stop those sorts of things, because if I'm carrying, 20,000 Trade Federation coins on me, and I go onto an Imperial planet and I try to use them and you can track me, then you can know, you can manage that economic system more adequately. But it also, the thing is, where it opens up, and something I think we can't even hope to answer really, is then when you look at something that requires the resources of a Death Star to be built, it makes a lot of sense why the Empire's whole philosophy was just go and brute force things and step in and take over a planet and vaporize the population. It's just the quest for resources. So maybe the answer here is Palpatine didn't give a good gosh darn about currency. Use whatever you want to. We're conquering planets because we've got to feed our troops and build our Death Stars.
Yeah. Well, and I'm trying to remember which, I think it might have been in the Catalyst book where they talk about the idea of the Empire strip mining planets, basically, so they can create the Death Star, and so, 100%, it wasn't about currency then at that point for Imperial credits. It is about just conquering and taking what you need to create what you want. I mean, you're not just when you think about when the Empire controls the credit system, it's understandable why you can have a military that vast, because that's not a part of the banking system, right? Like they're just taking what they want. They're not paying for it, They may be nominally paying for the workforce, possibly, but we saw it in Solo on Corellia, where they're creating the Star Destroyers, right? We know the Imperial fleet is massive, and so we saw it in Rebels with them, Thrawn and the creation of the Defender TIE project, as opposed to the Death Star. And there's all of these different projects, and we know the Emperor has these bases all over the place, these outposts, where he's collecting things. And so, yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. At that point, it's not it's nominally about currency for those looking on the outside in, but on the inside out, it's really just the Empire taking what it wants.
And it could also explain why so many people willingly join the Empire, is because they can guarantee that you're going to eat and have resources that you can't maybe get on your home planet and stuff like that. And so that would answer a question right there, where it's like, well, why would anybody join the Empire or become a stormtrooper? Well, when you're starving and somebody says, I can feed you, okay, that's what I'm going to do then. And, because it's survival at that point.
Well, and it also makes sense as to why smuggling would become such a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so important in this galaxy, and if you're willing to take that risk, you had a fast ship, it makes a huge difference on not just how much money you can make, but the lives of the black market becomes massive. We even see that in the Clone Wars, right? When Mandalore is neutral and they have to turn to the black market because they are cut off from trade routes and the Trade Federation.
Yeah. Yeah, which again, to get back to, like you were saying earlier, like we were saying earlier, like Star Wars becomes more accessible because, look, we can all dream of a world where currency isn't a thing and we don't have to pay anything for anything, but there's got to be some sort of trade. There's got to be some sort of exchange of some base level of valued resource or currency or what have you, because somebody's always going to want or need something they don't have.
Right.
And they are going to have to interact with somebody else to get it. And what can they offer, and all of those sorts of things. So I'm delighted, because this is one of those things where it's like, I wish that we were in person together.
Yeah.
with a beer and a cigar over a campfire to go on and on about this. But I invite everybody to join in the conversation. Come on, we would love to hear from you. And I know Matt would love to hear from you. So, Matt, where can people find you out there?
Well, please do hit me up on social media under the name MattRushing02. So any of the major platforms, you'll find me there. I would love to talk to you about Star Wars or anything else. And, of course, here on the network, I also did a show with Drea Kaufman. It was called Owl Post, and we talked about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. It's finished now, but it's a great show to be able to go back and listen to. Of course, you could find me over the Trek FM network. You can find me over on the TFM network doing a bunch of shows. One is the 602 Club, which is a whole side of that network that's devoted to all of the things outside of Star Trek. We talked a little bit about Star Trek on here, but that whole side of the network, we're talking about all the other fandoms we love. And in that feed, you can also find two bonus shows. One is called Assembling Avengers, and the other is Snyder Cuts. Both of those, one is about the movies that Zack Snyder directed, and the other is about the MCU. So there's just so much there for you. John's on both of those shows. He's frequently a guest on the 602 Club, so I hope you'll check that out. Also doing Literary Treks, The Orb, and Warp 5 over there. Literary Treks is about the books and the comics of Star Trek. Warp 5 is about Star Trek Enterprise, and The Orb is about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Now, John, if people want to catch up with you and, I don't know, maybe they've got a favorite Star Wars currency, where can they find you?
Oh, nobody wants to catch up with me, but I will accept any currency that you wish to exchange with me for my own invented currency called Kessel Junkie currency, which is of the realm of Kesselvania. KESSELJUNKIE on your social network of choice. Interact with me on Letterboxd. I would love that. But I'm also out there on other networks. You can find me right here on the network co-hosting House Lights, where we look at the director's works from their whole career or split up by decade or whatever other strange combination that we want to look at them. And, of course, you can find me, as Matt mentioned, over on Snyder Cuts and Assembling Avengers and appearing on 602 Club over there on TFM. So, honestly, I want to get back so that my currency is not devalued before I get back to the Jedi Temple to trade for the latest in the coolest Neimoidian technology that we have gotten. Sure, the rechargeable battery might have blown up in my lightsaber last time, but I'm willing to give them another chance. So, Master Rushing, I think it's time to close these negotiations.
John, negotiations are closed.